so far. You're like showing up at 9:06. That's right.
Why do we want to be on time?
That's right. If we're 10 minutes late for government, we're still early.
That's right. They may never show up. And when they do, they say they're here to help. So we don't like that.
Yeah, please don't show up, government. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's 9 p.m. on a Friday night on March 15, 2024. I'm Frank Johnson, co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation and co-host of the weekly Roundtable with my cohort, Michael Marshall, co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation, Michael Vasquez, Dragon of the Bronx, New York's only true independent journalist. And of course, our buddy Dal Grimm has joined us for this week's edition. So it's been a fast-paced week that I have not paid one bit of attention to. So, I have caught snippets of the news here and there and here and there.
You can't keep up with this shit.
No, it's
you
just
can't.
You see something come out with Fannie, and you get one thing happens, and then before you know it, three other things happen before you even finish reading the first article to see what the hell is going on. So I don't know what's going on there. I know
she gets to stay on the case. Her boyfriend had to get ejected from the case, so he resigned. They was it 6 or 9 charges?
6
that they basically threw out because they didn't know how to write up the charges.
It was too vague. I think they said it was too vague, the charges they were making, specifically around the phone call that Trump made when he was calling the Secretary of State to say, hey, where are all the votes for me?
Basically, what the judge said was that the prosecutor did not say how Trump was trying to get them to violate their oath of office.
Right.
Because perhaps he didn't.
Well, yeah, but they can't say that.
Okay, and as a result, it was too vague because essentially you could get anybody on violation of oath of office, especially right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if they're coming across with something and saying it's too vague, then shouldn't it be just dismissed? Because if it was too vague to bring the charge,
well,
not
in a
vague
sense,
enough?
they were dismissed. The judge threw out those charges. They can't. The only way they can go after those charges is to go through go through appeal, questioning why those charges were rejected, or to go through another grand jury indictment for those charges specifically.
And right now, it's probably easier just to maintain the other 10 charges that are currently being entertained.
It's all a waste of time. We've already seen the corruption. The corruption has been proven. It was hidden, which means that not only was it a matter of corruption and abuse of power, but then there's a conspiracy to hide this from the public because they lied publicly and got caught publicly. In evidence has already been shown. So there's an old adage: the root of the tree is the poison. You don't go for the leaf, you go for the root. This is the root of it. The root of it is these people who lied to the public, abused their power of office, have a personal political agenda, are trying to punish the public by removing the ability of the public to make a choice, as is their right by both the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. That's the root of this whole thing. Everything else is meaningless.
I think the reason why the judge ruled the way he did on Fannie was literally to make it so that it looked like he wasn't being partial to Trump. So he did enough ruling where they did get penalized a little bit, but not enough to completely remove her from the case.
But see, that's playing politics.
It is.
The judge isn't supposed to worry about the politics. He's worried about getting reelected, whether he's going to get donations next time he's up for an election. The answer is no. This is the law. These are the problems. She is disqualified because of her actions and her abuses of her office. Period.
And you bring up a good point there, Mike. And the fact that he is looking towards his next election. Yeah. That's why I don't believe any judicial members should be elected. I think they should be appointed and they should serve for life. If they aren't going to be appointed, then once they are elected, they serve for life, provided they serve with
the option to recall. I think there ought to be an option to recall in case they get to a point where they're legislating from the bench as opposed to actually ruling on law.
That would be a violation of the Constitution, which in turn would violate the good behavior clause. That's where this whole ethics deal that they're trying to push on the Supreme Court doesn't hold muster. Okay, if they believe the justices are violating their ethics, then they should hold an impeachment hearing and remove them from the bench. But if they're not going to do that, at least run an impeachment inquiry into them, then they've got nothing. They've got the ability already to hold these justices accountable if they believe they are violating their ethics. Okay, because that would be a violation of good behavior.
And the fact that they haven't obviously means that there's nothing there to do.
Well, that's it exactly. And they are trying to make this into a political gamesmanship.
No, it is.
That's all it is. They're trying to discredit the Supreme Court.
Well, that's the whole point. That's if they don't pass a law, how do you know that they did something? So they have to pass a new law. They can't just go to the law and enforce it. They have to pass a new law so you know they did something. So when you say, why should I reelect you? They can say, I did something. Was it effective? Was it efficient? You didn't ask me that question. Was it necessary? Didn't ask me that question. I did something. Confused the legal system, made it harder, made it more corrupt. Well, that's still doing something. It's just not beneficial.
And that's one there. You bring up another good point there. Okay. Was it necessary? Was it effective? Okay. There is a clause in the Constitution that everybody tries to gloss over or tries to misinterpret. Okay. Every law that is passed by our federal government must be necessary and proper to the carrying out of the powers assigned in the Constitution. Anything beyond that is unconstitutional because it is not necessary and proper.
Well, we have a lot of stuff that's not necessary,
exactly
proper. But that's
exactly, and that's where them just doing something is a complete violation of the Constitution.
I think that's the biggest source of corruption in our government, which leads to many of the problems, left, right, doesn't matter where you are, that everyone can point to and say, yeah, that's a problem, starts with this do something mentality. People have to stop saying do something to politicians and to the government. We have to say do something effective, do something efficient, because the longer we don't say that, the more we get this corruption that eats away at everything, and they get to escape accountability because their answer is, I did something.
And we've discussed that as well too.
Yeah.
Okay. The American people need to quit looking to government for the solution of the problems. It's not up to government. Government's ineffective at solving problems by their very nature. In order to legitimize themselves, they don't solve problems.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not in their best interest. That's why you've never seen, you never see Congress fix the problem. Most of the things that we deal with could have been fixed decades ago. Most of the big issues, we could have fixed it. We could fix immigration overnight. We could fix abortion overnight. This isn't a problem other than it gets people reelected. The longer they have the problem, the more people get reelected. Race issues, we fixed that in the 80s. By the mid 80s, we had essentially fixed the race issue in America.
Racism was almost pretty much non-existent. Yeah, you had some outliers.
Well, you're always going to have some outliers, but the overall trend and the overall image of America, whether you're looking at media, entertainment, life itself, pretty much wiped out. We're talking about one generation. We essentially wiped out racism in America, and then we had to bring it back. Al Sharpton, the left media had to bring it back. Why? Because it gets people elected. No one was able to raise the same kind of money. People weren't able to get reelected as easily without having the race card that they can pull and go, see, it's about race. Aren't you angry? Vote for me. And that's the sad thing about it.
There is good news, though. I saw that South Carolina became the 29th constitutional carry state. Go South Carolina.
Oh, I didn't see that. That's good of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So constitutional carry is really up and coming amongst the states. I'm hoping that it continues, that the trend continues.
Actually, Jan, in modern day, the 80s were probably one of the freest times in our history because most people thought, if it's not bothering me, why should I care about it?
For the most part, yeah.
Okay,
if it wasn't bothering
do whatever the hell you want. If it's not bothering me, if it's not violating my rights to do what I want to do, then go have a blast. I could care less. Okay, that was pretty much the 80s.
Yeah, that was pretty much the 80s. And look at where we've gone from there. We've gone backwards. I mean, we now have self-segregation or safe spaces, whatever you want to call it. That's going back to the 1950s. That's the worst of the Jim Crow. It's just now it's voluntary, so it can't be bad. Yeah. And it's black people doing it to black people and whites, so it can't be bad.
Yeah,
it's still segregation. It's still racism. Go ahead.
During the 80s, if I'm not mistaken, now this is when I was coming up. I remember the 80s being the moniker for the 80s was the me decade. You know, it was me. Everything was about me. When you looked at movies like Wall Street,
yeah,
and
it was the me generation.
Greed is good. There was a lot of focus on the 80s on individuality because people had opportunities at that time to make strides for themselves independently of what other people were doing. People were learning how to work the markets. It was entrepreneurial season.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was making money. Everybody was doing stuff. And I think everybody got so introspective, looking at how they could benefit things for themselves, that a lot of the problems, the superficial things that people were looking at outside of that, kind of went their own way. So like you were saying, Marshall, you're saying, if it didn't bother me, I didn't think about it. Well, that could really be attributed to that mentality that people had in the 80s, that it was about me. This is my world. I'm making my way in it. I'm going to fight for what I want to get. I'm going to become as successful as I can become. They didn't care about what the other guy was doing. They didn't look over their shoulder to see what the other guy was driving or anything else like that. You had a lot of the keep up with the Jones factor, but that lent to competition. That lent to people saying, I'm going to do better than the Joneses. I'm going to do more. I'm going to do better. I'm going to do faster. And people were rewarded for individual achievement. They were rewarded highly at that time for the skill set that they brought with them. So when you have people, what was that movie with Will Smith where he played the stockbroker who was living in his car or whatever it was. And that was, yeah, that was at that time. He was a guy who nobody would give him a chance. You know, you looked at him because he came in with dirty clothes and all the rest of that stuff, but he could outperform everybody. And he made a huge name for himself. He did what there were more millionaires made in the 80s per capita than any other decade in American history, except maybe when you get into the tech sector with the .coms and stuff like that.
The late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. And a lot of that was bubble money. A lot of that was bubble money. 80s millionaires, those were long-term monies. The bubbles, those were short-term money. A lot of people got rich, got broke just as fast. But it seems that when you have people that are focused on themselves, focused on their own needs, their own families, their own gain and everything else like that, all the rest of that superfluous bullshit falls to the wayside.
It does.
People don't think about it as much. They don't focus on it as much because it's not in their radar. They don't care about it. So if you don't care about racism, it's not affecting you. If racism isn't affecting you because you don't care about it, you're moving forward. And that's going to be said about all races.
Well, it's about the drive of the emotions. The politics is about driving that emotional response. That's why the ads target your emotions, the conversations you listen to. And the left is better at it than the right. Not that the right doesn't try to do it. The left is better at it. That's just a fact that they can drive emotions so well because they've been practicing for so long. And when you do that, when you get emotional, you stop thinking. I mean, what do people lose? What do they say when you're training to fight? Don't get emotional. Stay as calm as you possibly can. When you're in an emergency situation, whether it's an earthquake, a coup attempt, a fire, a flood. I've been through all of these things. Gee, what happens? Well, they always tell you, and the smartest thing to do, slow down, think. Don't react, think. Think through what's going on. You will increase your likelihood of surviving and not getting injured by thinking through the situation. If you're just running around like a chicken with your head cut off, you're probably going to get yourself killed. If you're thinking, the order of magnitude that you're going to survive increases exponentially. And so that's very important. And we see a lot of that. When the 80s had less, not none, but less and less effective emotional triggers to get people to react counter to logic. Today, there is none. I mean, we started under when AOC did her 60 Minutes interview. That I count as the start of the emotional government, where we are governed by truth, my truth, my feeling, not the facts, not anything empirical, not the data, just how do I feel? And we have been carried since that time going till today, and probably for another year or two, this whole thing of, but I feel it must be true because I feel. And the more you do that, the more you're going to damage yourself and everyone else around you. And things that, and they're capitalizing. You know how they're capitalizing on it right now? I'll give you one great example of this. Where is it? Hang on. A great example of that is right here. There it is. You see that? Who is that? No one should go to jail for smoking weed. Vice President Harris says at the White House. Most people, they're counting on the fact that no one's going to think, that they're going to react emotionally. Either you're against legalizing drugs or you're for legalizing drugs. Maybe you're selling the drugs and you're like, oh my God, listen to this statement. They want to legalize drugs across America. Doesn't matter that Oregon just showed us that legalizing drugs wantonly is a bad thing. And every promise you've been told about how great it's going to be, lie, didn't happen, doesn't work. No, that's not the part that you really should focus on. This is the same woman whose claim to fame, she only has two. One, she slept with Willie Brown. Two, she arrested and enjailed more black people for drug offenses than anyone else. That's
and
why
fabricated evidence to keep them in jail when it was proven they're innocent.
Exactly. They were in jail and they were going to stay in jail because that made her famous. That got her elected, which then got her to where she is now. And she's the one who's now saying that, no, we're going to legalize it. No one should go to jail. This is a slap in the face of so many people on so many levels. This is absolutely pandering for votes. And it's based on the fact that you're going to be emotional about legalizing or not legalizing drugs, and not this woman just did a 180 in your face to take advantage of getting votes. That's the problem.
I think the most emotional appeal I can remember from the 80s were the Feed the Starving Kids in Africa commercials that you used to see.
Sally Struthers?
Yeah. You can feed 10 Somalians if you just send us $1.
Yeah.
It cost about a cup of coffee. And then you had Bonnie Franklin. You had Bonnie Franklin from One Day at a Time with the little short bob-headed, red-headed hairdo. What can one person do? Oh, I'll tell you, not much.
I don't remember Bonnie Franklin. I do remember Sally Struthers.
Doing the commercials before Sally Struthers was.
So that's what I remember for the 80s. That emotional appeal.
I have an eidetic memory for these things. I remember every spokesperson for every cause.
Yeah, I didn't remember her, but I also did remember the 80s were also the time of This Is Your Brain on Drugs, which we've seen memed to hell. That is the biggest joke. I mean, everyone's
you get some help.
Yeah. This is your brain on drugs. This is your brain on drugs with bacon and hash.
Well, but, at least then it was bacon and hash, and now it's going to be human calves.
Oh God! No, it's going to be bugs now.
Here's what's real funny on this is Biden. Here they are. They're doing a complete flip flop because Biden was one of the sponsors of the crime bill that caused a lot of the war on drugs and stuff.
Well, Biden was also a proponent of border security at one point. He claims to be a proponent of handling, classified documents the right way. He claims to be a proponent, about not sniffing babies. But
come on, Jack. It was in my Corvette. It was locked.
Yeah, of course. The safety, the Fort Knox nature of his garage with what do you call that lock? The
gorilla lock.
Not even the gorilla lock. It's the lock that everyone used to use for their locker in high school.
Master lock.
Master lock. That's it. Master lock. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous. But I mean, I can't think of a more blatant example than Kamala turning around and using drugs and the position of the government on drugs and selling this. It's the same thing as when they're trying to get the college students waiving the loans. They're buying votes. They're saying, if you elect me, not the other guy, this is the free stuff I'm going to give you. These are the perks, the little pick-me-ups, the emotional boost that I'm going to give to you. Mind you, this is like any addiction. It's temporary. Oh, you feel good about having drugs. Fantastic. By the way, you're ruining your life because while you're high, no problems. Then you sober up and life is still there. The problems you tried to escape are still there. You still have to deal with them. And now you have less money and less time to deal with those problems. So you get high again because you're even more depressed than when you started off. Oh, isn't that a nasty little spiral vortex that you put yourself into? And the government's doing it because they don't care about you. They care about the tax money they're going to get from those drugs. They don't care. They don't care about you. Kamala Harris doesn't care. She will throw people in jail or let them out of jail, whichever one gets her a vote. She doesn't care because she's done both. And it's so obvious to us. And the mainstream media is not turning around going, this is hypocritical and it's insulting. And where do you really stand? Are you doing this just for votes? They will never ask her, you're doing this just to get votes, aren't you? They'll never ask her that, because the only answer she can give is yes.
Well, it's a twofer for the government, if you think about it, because look, if they legalize the drug, right? So they go out and you go to a dispensary, a federal or a state certified dispensary, and it doesn't get legalized at the federal level, but it gets legalized at the state level like it's currently been. But they keep the gun laws on the books about controlled substances. They can reach right through and they can disarm you. They can throw you in jail for having a controlled substance and trying to exercise your Second Amendment right at the same time. They're never going to change that. That's a perfect loophole.
Well, they never think through all of these laws. They never think through the consequences of all these laws. We'll talk about in a little bit. Frank in the green room was talking about something. He brought up a consequence of something that Bernie Sanders is now trying to do that, honestly, I didn't even remember it. No one in the news media is talking about it. No one's even thought about it. They won't even talk about what I'm talking about. And Frank brought up a wonderful example of not thinking through the consequences of what they're doing because they're so busy trying to buy votes. We'll get to it. And that's with Bernie Sanders. That just happened yesterday. But I mean, it's stupid. And that's why we also have, and by the way, for people who think, well, that's just the Democrats doing that. That's just, what else do we expect from these guys? Let me make sure that it's clear for everyone. It is so embedded into our politics right now that it's not only, according to MSNBC, as you can see, it's also RFK. Mind you, MSNBC, they're using this as a joke. They're laughing about it. But the fact is, RFK is doing the same thing that Kamala Harris is doing. She's doing it with drugs. He's doing it with baseball, football. Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers as VP? No, he's just trying to get through the news media blackout. MSNBC hasn't mentioned RFK Jr.'s name in about 6 months. And they don't want to. There's a news media blackout on him no matter what he does. He's gotten, he's on the ballot in 2, maybe 3 states right now. He's trying to get on to another 12. I don't care if you like him. I don't care if you hate him. I don't care if you're going to vote for him or not. Doesn't matter whether you think he's a spoiler third party, whatever your reason. The fact is he's news. He is ranking 15% in polls in the 2024 election. He's a factor. He should be covered in the news. He not
be covered in the news, number one. Number two, he should have full ballot access across the country.
He should, but he doesn't. And the news media is trying to black him out so that no one knows about him, no one talks about him, so that he has as little impact as possible. Again, censoring the public's choices, eliminating one of their choices without them even knowing they had the choice. And the only reason why they're talking about this is Aaron Rodgers is too popular, too famous to not mention. They lose eyeballs if they aren't mentioning because everyone else will. And so now this gets in there. This was their I believe this was marketing. I don't think RFK is going to ever pick him for VP, but this is his marketing to get through the news media blackout.
Yeah.
And that election blockage.
I have to say that RFK using his father's old style of the pitch from the 1960s, like that vote for RFK commercial that they had out that had
when he was doing the John F. Kennedy thing.
Yeah, that was actually quite slick. I thought I liked that a lot, actually.
No, I did like that one. I thought that was well done. But then that pissed off all the Democrats, especially the Democrats in his family, who have a lot of power in the DNC. And so they had to denounce him on it. But he was in his right to do that. It's, again, this is the gamesmanship. This is the corruption that we're seeing. And this is how it's eating away at people, taking away our rights. It's sad that to know that Kamala Harris would throw you in jail as quickly as she would release you from jail if she can get your vote. She doesn't care. Whichever one gets her the most votes, she'll do it.
I wouldn't be surprised if New Hampshire actually voted for RFK, just as sort of like a screw you to the DNC based on what they did during the primaries to basically disenfranchise the Democrats in the entire state.
No, that won't happen because we already see. It's like what we saw in Super Tuesday when Michigan, 100,000 voters in Michigan voted uncommitted because of Rashida Tlaib, because they hate America and because they're pro-Hamas. And because it was 100,000, that 100,000 would have put him tied directly with Trump in the Michigan primaries, even though they're not raised against each other. So to get back that 100,000 voters that he needs in Michigan, State of the Union, he's talking about building a port in Gaza. He's aiding and abetting people who are actively killing Americans and torturing Americans as we speak. That's just insane. And that's because he needs that 100,000 votes. So if they're willing to do that for 100,000 votes, there's a lot more people who are smoking drugs. Look at all the states that have legalized marijuana. Yeah, they will either threaten them with going in jail or releasing everyone from every other jail if it means they get those votes. They are willing to do anything. Oh, destroy the economy by wiping out college debt? Don't care. Does it get me the votes? Oh, get someone who's unqualified for public office. Aaron Rodgers, he plays football, never had a real job in his life, has nothing to do with politics at all, other than a couple of tweets. Oh, yeah, that's the reason why we want him to go to North Korea and have a conversation with Kim Jong-un. Yeah, that'll work out really well. Are we stupid? The average American isn't, but this is what they're doing because they're assuming we're not going to ask the question, is it effective? Is it efficient? Are you accountable? And as long as we don't ask these things, this is what they're doing. They're destroying the Constitution before our eyes. I mean, if anyone in chat thinks I'm wrong, please let me know. If you guys, in the panel, you think I'm wrong, let me know.
Actually, that whole Hamas support ties into another issue with the recent ban on TikTok passing the House and how it has bipartisan support. Believe it or not, TikTok has actually been fundamental in pushing a lot of pro-Hamas propaganda.
I believe it.
And they've actually seen a rise amongst the youth getting most of their information about the Israeli-Gaza conflict from TikTok. So this bipartisan support is actually a reaction to a lot of electoral loss because the support is going away from the current administration because they being the TikTokers do not see the current administration as being supportive enough of their wishes for Gaza. So they're losing a youth vote there. So they want to ban TikTok so that they can get that youth vote back and control the narrative.
And that's never been more obvious than Chuck Schumer, who he panders towards New York Jews for every election.
Yeah.
It's one of the major segments of New York voting, especially in New York City, and most of the donations. So
it's actually one of the factors that has kept him in office.
Yeah. And now, because you're seeing that reaction, which is driven in part by TikTok, it's driven in part by the Democratic Socialists of America. Because of that progressive movement, which is supported by communism, the Chinese communists, what a shock there. Well, it's so strong that he now has to actually throw away one of his bedrock core constituencies. And he's coming out and now saying, oh, well, we have to change the government of Israel. We have to change everything. They have legal. No one's ever disputed the elections in Israel as being legal, as being above board, being honest and fair. And here he is, Chuck Schumer, in another country, knows nothing about it, and here he is trying to influence that other country's elections so that it politically helps him and helps the progressives and communists.
All right, so let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Since this piece of shit Schumer ran around with every other Democrat for years complaining about how Russia tried to interfere with our elections, how come nobody's calling him to the carpet about how, well, hey, Chuck, aren't you trying to interfere in elections in somebody else's country? Why don't you mind your friggin' business?
Yeah.
He'll never be asked that question.
No.
He'll never be asked that
Absolutely
question.
Pieces of shit.
Yeah, he is.
New York Times. They will never. I just showed you the New York Times article. They're never going to say, in that article, they will never say, hey, Chuck, you're interfering just like you claimed Russia was interfering in our elections.
Because
They'll never ask
him
him that
making that statement, we need to change the government in Israel. If you were to put that into a soundbite or a video clip and run it on the news and add it up for how many seconds that ran on American airtime for however many months that it was, and put a dollar sign on it, I'm sure it would be more than the $160,000 that Russia spent on ads in the 2016 election.
Do you know how much money it costs to get an ad in the New York Times?
Right.
And
so
he's got an entire page.
How much is his word worth? Yeah, how much is his word worth? Because that's $1 million or better in free advertising for the opposition for Netanyahu.
Yeah, it's millions. And that's just if he's doing that, he's also doing more. And he also is putting pressure on Biden to also take that same stance and to put pressure on, and he has been putting pressure. In fact, we now know Biden has been talking to the opposition of Netanyahu in Israel, trying to make a deal with them. So that's just come out. So, and all of this is to help Hamas, a terrorist, internationally recognized terrorist organization that killed 34 Americans and has captured and is torturing, sexually abusing Americans right this second. And he is helping them. This makes no sense. You are giving money to the people who killed your people, who are torturing your people as we speak. You are trying to hurt our ally that is trying to get our people back, that are trying to protect our people. This is the inversion of logic. This is the perversion of the purpose of government, protect our people. This is unconstitutional.
Well, you said it makes no sense. Again, I will remind you, these people are evil. It doesn't have to make sense to you or me or to anybody else walking around who's got, an IQ over 20. It makes sense to them because they're evil. The destruction, listen, why we're the big Satan, Israel's the little Satan, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that the common thread that we hear? You have people in our government who are willfully trying to destroy the fabric of the United States.
No, Mark.
There's only one other great, I'm going to use the word democracy out there, and that's Israel. If America falls, Israel falls. Yeah. Simple as that. But that's the end. That's the end game. That's the end goal for them. Biden has no love for Israel. He's got no love for the Jewish people. The only thing that the Jews are to the Democrat Party are the same thing the blacks are to the Democrat Party. A vote. A vote handed to every 4 years to try and remain in power because the promise is worth more than the fulfillment. As long as you keep failing to live up to what you said you're going to do, you can continue to promise to do it. And failure is worth it for them. They don't care about the blacks. They don't care about the Jews. They don't care about the Hispanics. They don't care about anybody. All they care about is power and reshaping the United States into whatever the hell is on the back pages of the rules for radicals. That's the only thing they're interested in. If you want to ask why Biden's do what he's doing, ask Barry why he's having Joe do what he's doing. Because Barry's the one running the show from the basement.
It's the authoritarians club.
Fan of Israel.
No, and you're right. And it's the authoritarians club, basically. I mean, what Voss and I have been discussing for almost the better part of 2 years is the fact that there's this sense that feudalism never died; it just changed its pants. Right? It's old aristocracy meeting new aristocracy, and they're all trying to get together to reestablish this globalist style gentleman's club that only a select few are allowed to wield power, and then the rest of us are the chattel that are going to fuel it. And that's how that's what you're seeing before our very eyes, is this consolidation of power, and the players are attempting to gaslight the rest of us into not thinking for ourselves and not acting on our convictions. And they do that by disenfranchisement. They do it by deception. They do it by confusion. They do it by pitting each other against one another. I mean, when you think about it, what we were talking about the other day, hyphenated Americans.
Oh God!
Why are we hyphenated? Why would you even choose that? You are of the country that you're in because you want to be there. So why don't you be that? It doesn't matter where you came from. If you believe in liberty, then you come to America because this is where liberty flourished. It doesn't matter now. They've managed to convince people that it's better to divide oneself and insulate oneself within this hyphenation so that you all get yours, and somehow that's going to equal out and create some sort of equity, which really all it is slavery.
Equity is evil.
So once again, Frank, this is why you get paid the big money.
Yeah,
They're
the big
evil.
money.
But tell me I'm wrong, guys. I mean, am I wrong in what I'm saying in the way that I am present? And we're able to present evidence of this. That's the thing. It's not just like, oh, this is my conclusion. Here's the evidence that gets me there. And the evidence is in front of our face.
Isn't it the best kept secret is an open secret, right? The best kept secret is an open secret. It's not a secret. It's all out there. It's just people are not looking at it, because even though we can talk about it, what do you really do about it?
You don't vote for them. You vote for someone else. Whether they say it's a legit vote or not, vote for someone else. If you're a Democrat and you absolutely have to vote Democrat because you can't possibly vote for an independent like RFK, or a libertarian like whoever the libertarians pick, or God help you, a Republican, whether it's Trump or anyone else, then vote for a different Democrat or vote for Mickey Mouse. I don't care. But you have to do something different. If you're doing the exact same thing and then have the same complaint afterwards, you failed.
Well, we are literally living the definition of insanity right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're on the madhouse.
You voted for the same guy and he did the same thing that he did last time, and you were upset then and you're upset now, and you got nothing as a benefit, and everything fell apart, and it fell apart even more, just like you knew it would, just like you were told it was going to. So you're going to go vote and do it again. What?
I laugh because it sounds
economy. Biden has failed in every economic endeavor that he has tried to do. It is mathematically, empirically, absolutely correct to say that Biden has failed in the economy. That is a fact. So you need to re-elect Biden so that he can continue to fail at the economy. Why is that? How? I don't understand that. I don't get it.
I laugh only because it's true, and it sounds so ridiculous coming out of our mouths when we talk about it, but it really is that way. And it just is going to continue.
I've had this conversation with many, many, many Democrats, progressives, and liberals. And yes, they're all three different things, even though they're all under the same ticket. So as much as they were like, oh, I'm not a Democrat, I'm a progressive. You're on the Democratic ticket. I'm not a progressive or a Democrat. I'm a liberal. You're on the Democratic ticket. So you're a Democrat. Yeah. You mean they don't even like saying, they don't like to admit, oh, I'm a Democrat. You're on the Democratic ticket. You're voting for the Democratic candidate. So you are a Democrat. Whether you saying that, oh no, but I'm different, but you're supporting the same thing that is causing the problem that you admit is the problem.
Yeah.
What's the difference? So they can so you can go to sleep a little bit better because no, I'm just a liberal. I'm not responsible. I'm a liberal. But you voted Democrat. You voted for the problem.
But the irony is that honestly, the real liberals are you, Voss, me, Frank, Mike. We're actually the real liberals.
Classical liberalism.
Yeah. Well, and therein lies the problem. Like the titles, the words, they've all been hijacked. Our language is not even our own language anymore. It's been made up and confused, and definitions have been changed right before our eyes. What's a recession? Well, we're in one. No, we're not. We changed the definition. Well, who gave you the right to change the definition? Well, I did. Well, who are you?
I'm the guy in charge.
Yeah. I'm the guy you voted for. Well, I didn't vote for you. Did you vote for him? You look at your neighbor. They're like, no, I didn't vote for him. You look at your other neighbor. No, I didn't vote for him. Meanwhile, somebody down in New York City is like, oh, yeah, we voted for him. I don't know why.
Something as simple as, did we vote to change the definition of a recession? Did we vote to change the definition of what is a man, what is a woman? Did we vote for these things? No. Someone just woke up one morning and said, it's changed. You no longer can say those things because it's changed. But wait a minute. No one got a group together and said, hey, let's change this. Let's look through this. Here's the reason. No, you just changed it. And you changed it to some of the most asinine things. As an example, and I think it's most clearly seen, what is the definition of a woman? Not a man. What is the definition of a man? Not a woman. That's called circular logic, people. That's not a definition. You haven't answered the question. And that's a problem. And we're supposed to be dumb enough, compliant enough to never bring that up. And if you're compliant about something as essential and critical and clear set as what is a recession, what is a man, what is a woman, if we can't get these essential, clear, absolutely well-defined items correct, then how can you go into law and get that correct? What's a hate crime? A hate crime? Well, that's a crime against. What is a hate crime? Notice we have you killed someone. Well, that's a hate crime, right? No. It was a white guy who killed a white guy. Oh, so that's not a hate crime, but they hated each other. Yeah, but it's not a hate crime. How about this black guy who killed a black guy? Well, that's not a hate crime, but he killed him because he hated him. That's not a hate crime. Oh, but the black guy killed a white guy. That's not a hate crime. But the black guy said he's a black supremacist, like the black guy on actual fact, New York City subway 2023, the black supremacist on the New York City subway who shot people because he's a black supremacist. Okay. And that's a hate crime. No. That's just a black guy being angry and shooting people. But it's all about hate. He said so. It's in his own words. He had a manifesto. Yeah, but that's not a hate crime. Oh, but the Buffalo shooter, same year, a week after the New York City subway shooting, yeah, that was a hate crime.
Speaking of subways, did you see that latest gem from the you should be there from the New York City subway system yesterday?
Yeah, just caught that one.
Woman who got thrown onto the tracks because her boyfriend just pushed her onto the tracks, and all the state troopers and all the National Guard didn't stop it.
Well, it happens every week, so who cares? No, the two guys get into an altercation on the subway. One guy sitting there minding his own business, and he's accosted by some very hostile individual. The hostile individual and him get into it. They're arguing and stuff like that. The hostile guy pulls out a knife, and he goes to stab the other guy. The other guy manages to wrestle the knife from the guy and inflict injury to the guy who originally had the knife. Then the knife winds up on the floor. Now other people get involved and they try breaking up the scuffle because the guy who pulled the knife is now the hostile guy is now the victim. The victim is now the hostile guy. So now there's a guy with a stab wound, the knife on the floor, but the guy who stabbed, who pulled the knife out originally, goes to his bag, pulls out a gun, goes to shoot the other guy. The other guy wrestles the gun from him and puts a slug into the guy. So the guy went from victim to assailant to victim to assailant, and now he's under arrest.
Yeah, there's a slight difference.
Well, actually, he has been released.
Has he?
Yeah, and it was ruled as self-defense.
Yeah, but I heard initially when I heard about it, there was the aggressor and his girlfriend. He was stabbed by the guy's girlfriend who was involved in the altercation. So the victim who became the aggressor, who became the victim and then got arrested, the fact that he got released is immaterial to the fact that he was the victim. And he got arrested.
Okay, he never should have been arrested. Okay,
no,
he had no weapons to begin with. He was trying to mind his own business. He was forced to protect himself and did so with the offenders,
with the assailants' weapons. Yeah.
All right, now, it's just it goes to show you the two things that this completely flies in the face of everything that leftists tell you. All right. One, it proves that if you're on the subway, you need a way to defend yourself because the cops are not going to be able to do so.
No, the cops were on the platform.
The other thing that it tells you is the fact that the people who are on the subway don't give a shit about what laws you pass.
Well, here's the thing. Didn't they just bring in 750 National Guard troops?
Yes, and they didn't do a damn thing.
Check bags to prevent this very thing from happening?
Yeah.
One, it's random checks on the bags. Two, that's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Three.
Oh, I agree that it is a violation, but isn't that the whole purpose?
Well, that's what happens when you have they're playing lottery. They're doing the lottery. It's 5.5 million people on the subway per day. Every time one of those guards go in, they've got a 1 in 5.5 million chance of getting the right person. It was never going to make anyone safe. And here's the example of it. It can't. You can't make people safe by putting them in a police state, which is what they've effectively done. It's so aggravating. It really is. But that's yet another example of what I'm talking about with this emotion, because they use the emotion of safety. Here we go. We've nationalized we've activated the National Guard. You're going to be safe. That is a statement of feeling, not fact. And it is in no way could it possibly actually work. That's 750 National Guardsmen is not nearly enough to handle the new MTA. You are absolutely guaranteed you're not going to be made more safe because of that. And there's 5.5 million bags that they're trying to illegally search. There's no way they can cover that.
There's a proposal, and Hochul is pushing this, where in certain stations, heavily trafficked stations, the bag checks will be mandatory.
Can't be. I know she wants it to be, and she wants to get that. Can't. I don't care. Even if New York State legislature passes that, it is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. It is a violation of our God-given birthright rights.
Here's what they're saying.
Well, they'll do it until a judge tells them they can't. And you're not going to find an activist judge in New York who's going to go against her. Someone's going to have to bring suit, and it's going to take months for it to take place before somebody actually hears.
It's going to take more than months. It'll take years.
Now,
just like all this stuff does.
Now, to be fair, the New York
subway riders may soon be subject to mandatory bag checks. Thousands of members of state personnel would be deployed to NYC's busiest subway stations to perform mandatory baggage checks to improve overall subway safety.
Yeah, they worded it like that to make it sound like she has the right and the power to do that. She doesn't. I don't care, even if you get New York State legislature to vote for that. That still doesn't give them the right to do it. They don't have that right. They can't do that.
No, but they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah,
right. Well, that's what I was going to say. But to be fair, it probably would hit the New York State Supreme Court, and it would be shot down like the red flag.
Well, here's how they're trying to,
but it would still be enacted.
This violation, okay, because the check is mandatory or isn't mandatory. It's voluntary.
Yeah, I know.
But if you refuse to volunteer for the check, you can be refused to be allowed on the subway.
Which would then violate the 8th Amendment. Cruel and unusual punishment. They don't have the right. You can't stop me. Just because I didn't comply with an unlawful, unconstitutional request, does that mean that I get to be punished? That goes back to what have I also said about? It is
right here.
Accusation equals guilt. You've been accused. Because you didn't comply, then we are going to accuse you of being guilty, and therefore we're going to punish you as if you are guilty. You can't come on the subway. Sorry, 8th Amendment, you're wrong. You can't do that. And I can't wait until the day they try to stop me with that, because my answer is, hang on, I just need to turn on my phone because you're going to wind up arresting me. Because 1, no, you can't look into my stuff. 2, you can't stop me from going where I'm going. Get out of my way, or arrest me, or shoot me. One of the 3.
Well, okay, so this, I don't even know when this is dated for sure. Stock riders will be able to refuse bag check. However, they will be unable to enter the station until they give consent. They can refuse, said Governor Hochul.
No, they can't.
We can refuse them. They can walk. Additionally, Governor Hochul is proposing an amendment to state laws that would restrict anyone who has been convicted of a violent crime against a passenger from riding a subway or bus. This ban would prevent assailants from committing further attacks on the subway for at least 3 years.
Yeah, and that's also a gimmick. Because here's the thing. If you're arrested because of an assault, that's going to almost always, and when we're talking about the subway, that means you're New York State assault in the 2nd degree. That comes with a mandatory 2-year prison sentence. She's asking for banning you from the subway for 3 years. So the day she does that, she guarantees a 66% success rate, because the person is going to be upstate in the jail and won't be able to be on the MTA, which means she can turn around and use it as a gimmick in her ads for re-election, saying 66% of the time we've kept these criminals off of the subway. Yes, because they're in jail because they committed assault, not because your law worked.
But here's the deal too. She also can't do that because of the simple fact is you have people that have been arrested and convicted and have done their time. And now she's going to say, okay, now you can't go on the subway for 3 years. If you got somebody who's just released and they just wound up serving the time, and then you're going to tack an additional penalty onto what the court already prescribed as the remedy for the crime that they committed.
Denying them the ability to eat and
They
live.
do that already.
Yeah.
You're penalizing them in addition. That's illegal. You can't do that.
They do that already, Frank.
Yeah, they're doing it already.
They take away voting. They take away gun ownership.
That questionable.
Right. But at least here, all right. We listen, you and I, Michael, we're absolutists, okay? We're absolutists. You serve your time, you're convicted, you serve your time, you come out, you get your justice, your rights restored. We are on the same page about that. However, if a guy 5 years ago committed a felony, and he's aware that by committing a felony, if he gets caught and tried, that's the law as it was 5 years ago, that he's not going to have his ability to do that, is one thing. But somebody who was arrested 2 years ago for assault on the subway, and they know that the punishment is going to be they get 2 years in jail. That's what the punishment is. When the guy gets out, you can say, oh, by the way, we're also going to tell you can't ride the subway for 3 years. Well, you can't do that. You can't add more penalty onto something that somebody's already served the time.
Double jeopardy.
And what that's already been adjudicated. It's been adjudicated already. You can't add it. It's like saying you're going to add a fine after the fact. You're adding a fine after the fact, and that's illegal. You can't do that.
Right, but what Voss was saying is that the reason Hochul can make a 3-year ban on the subway is that she knows that for 2 of those years, that ban is going to be in effect at the same time that guy's in jail. So it's almost 66% of the time it works every time, right?
Right.
So it's going to be one of those things where she's going to be able to point to it in an election year and be like, I kicked them off the subways, they're gone. And then the third year, a year goes by, and then all of a sudden this guy that was put away for an assault on a train, who was banned from it for 3 years, suddenly shows back up. And they're like, wait, we thought you were in jail. You couldn't be here. You're banned off the subway for 3 years. Well, I spent 2 of those years in jail. Now I'm back, baby. Give me your money.
And then it gets even worse, because the more you try and enforce that, well, now you're denying that individual the ability to go to work, to make a life, to try and correct their life, have a honest livelihood, to pay their rent, to pay their bills, to feed themselves. And you're now denying them that because they can't try. New York City, everyone rides the MTA to get to work, to get food, to live their life. And you've just denied them that opportunity to live their life, which is directly, and you're basically saying, go commit a crime. And once they start to commit the crime, which is get on the MTA to go to work, well, then if I've committed one crime today, how many other crimes I might as well keep rolling the dice. Because once they catch me on the MTA going to a job or going to the movies or seeing my mom who's sick in a hospital, then since they're going to already put me back in jail, might as well commit the next crime because I'm already guilty. And it doesn't stop there. So this is the problem. This is why I hate what Hochul has done, and the fact that no one has stopped to ask her about it. The consequences are so much bigger. And the news media, they're not stupid. These guys who graduated from Harvard, from Cornell University, from Bingham University, where they got indoctrinated in the proper way to think, they know this is the consequence, and they won't ask the question so they don't have to print the answer, because they're trying to protect her, because they want the progressive ideology. They don't care about the consequence because it's not going to affect them. They're not going to be the victim. Why? They don't live in the city. They get the black cars, which for people who don't know, that just means it's a private cab. They get the black cars. They get to use the Ubers. That's all on the company car account. They're not on the subway. They don't have to deal with these people. They don't live in the city. They live on the outskirts of the city, on Long Island or upstate. So they don't have to deal with this problem. So they don't care. This is the problem. This is how the rot eats away at the Constitution, at our rights, at our ability to have a society that's stable. And they don't care because it keeps them in power.
So speaking of Uber,
okay.
Did you hear that Uber and Lyft are no longer going to be operating in Minneapolis?
No, I didn't hear that.
Why?
Yeah.
What happened?
Uber and Lyft are about to suspend service in Minneapolis. The announcement comes after a dramatic back and forth tussle with the city leadership over the past year, which boils down to minimum wage pay for Uber and Lyft drivers.
Oh, no.
Okay, basically, the city council of Minneapolis was going to require Uber and Lyft to pay a minimum of $1.40 per mile and 51 cents per minute rates that cities would approximates would add up to the drivers earning a $15.57 minimum wage after expenses.
So in other words, they were going to regulate them like a taxi company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. According to Minneapolis, basically the drivers in Minneapolis currently make a median pay of about $13.63 per hour after expenses, according to data from the state.
Yeah, it is insane. Some of this stuff, I don't know.
I was gonna say let's do a little thought experiment here and kind of play out what would happen if Hochul is able to go ahead with this 3-year ban. So, in order to be able to make sure that the right people got onto the subway and the wrong people stayed off, one of the things that you would have to do is you'd have to make sure that you could identify everybody that was going in and out of the station, right? So one of the things that the state could do is they could do like what China does, and the CCP has domestic cameras all over the place. They would start using gait recognition. They'd start using face recognition. They could do up a whole technical database of the citizenry of New York State. And you essentially would live in a police state with a social credit score.
Well, it would be.
But what I'm saying is it would be so pervasive that just like the CCP has done in places in China, you break the law, your whole likeness goes up on a billboard and the entire community is now aware of you and you are shamed publicly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the problem. They have to violate your privacy. They violate not just your privacy, everyone's privacy, to be able to try and punish this one person above and beyond the punishment they already received. Now you have to punish everyone. You have to take away everyone's rights so you can then put that one punishment on that one person, maybe sometimes if they continue to commit. Again, it's destructive. It is evil. Mike McLean had brought up the question as well, and I agree, just like you're saying, Dow. It's just, again, we keep falling down. The dominoes keep moving. And if we're able to think about it. New York Times has 10,000 people. CNBC, MSNBC have 10,000 people apiece. These people, some of them are getting 6-figure salaries. They're getting input with AI and all the reporters and the database that they have, and they have connections to each and every one of these politicians.
And they are able to focus on singular topics.
And they could do this, and that's their job to do that. And you mean to tell me not one of them has been able to figure out what we've been able to talk about in the space of 5-10 minutes here? We've delved into this deeper than the entire New York Times, 30,000 members of the news media who collectively are getting tens of millions of dollars, and 4 guys on the internet figured out the problems and they can't.
Well, let's also not forget that it surprisingly, her plan will get approval by a majority of New York City residents.
Mm-hmm.
You know why?
Yeah,
because it wasn't that long ago that they're talking mandatory vaccinations for people, and if you didn't get vaccinated, that you were public enemy number one. You should be excoriated. Your face should be on a fucking milk carton.
You're going to get sent to a camp.
Yeah, you need to be re-educated and all the rest of stuff. They were all fine with, if you didn't want to get a vaccine, of having police services, fire services, ambulance services, medical services, not allowing you to go to the store, not allowing you to go get food, not allowing you to have deliveries to your housemate. They basically wanted to starve you to death if you did not comply with their mandate to get vaccinated. Vaccine ID cards, if you wanted to travel, you got to get on a bus, a train, a plane, a boat, a canoe, whatever the hell they wanted to do. You had to have a vaccine ID card to do it. And the people bought into it. They bought into it and they loved it. They loved it. It was their little clique. Ooh, we're vaccinated. You're not. Oh, you're not with the in crowd. You're not with the in crowd. And now they're going to try this crap, and they're going to do, sure, let's isolate people so that they can't get on the trains. Oh, you don't want to show your bag? Oh, you have to walk. You have to take a cab. Oh, wait, you got to go from downtown to midtown? Sorry, go take a cab, but you're going to have to incur that midtown fee, that additional tax to cross in your own island. You have to pay a fee to go from Midtown to Uptown, or vice versa. It's all a friggin' sham. And the people in New York City are friggin' sheep. They're sheep. They honestly, they put the blinders on, they put the feeder wrapped around their face, and they don't give a damn. They don't give a damn. Stoplight cameras on every corner, speeding cameras on every corner. You walk outside, you fart, you get a fine. Somebody throws a piece of aluminum foil in your garbage can when you don't know about it, you get a $250 fine from sanitation because you didn't adequately police your recycling. But then they come and put all of that shit into the same damn truck.
Yeah, I know.
It's sheep. New York, listen, New York is getting everything that they deserve. Everything they deserve.
Yes, I largely agree with that. But again, it hasn't hit. The problem with, and this goes back to, we've had this discussion about civil war. Is it coming? What will trigger it? Blah, blah. And part of the problem is the temperature, the agitation level of all the different groups that make up what is America are all at different levels. And we're getting closer. Everyone's rising, some faster than others, but we're none of us are there at the same time. And they're counting on that. They're counting that we won't all, a critical mass of Americans won't all hit the threshold of this is too much all at the same time, because there's too many things competing, and that's why they have equity.
And here's the thing is, when you do hit that threshold of this is too much, eventually you become not mute. It's kind of like complacent.
Desensitized.
Yes, you become desensitized to it. So you eventually come to a point where it's too far, and then you get to a point where you just accept it.
Well, that's one of two choices. It's too much, and then either you have to grow to accept it, or you have to rebel against it. It's one or the other. You can't. Well, once you hit that point, there's no other option. It's you either have
and
to.
That's why
you have to rebel.
Okay, unless everybody hits it at the same critical mass, we'll never hit that toppling point.
There's actually 3 points of critical mass when you look at it, and the Soviet Union is actually a perfect example for this. If you have the critical mass of dissatisfaction first, and that's the one the politicians don't want, because if it's just dissatisfaction, and you have a critical mass of population that is able to peacefully, passionately, but peacefully say no collectively and deny the government the ability to pursue these avenues of evil, then there's nothing you can do. The government will not have the resources to be able to enforce something on that large of a population without using some phenomenal force that pushes you to the next level of critical mass, which would then be the actual kinetic conflict, which is the war. And then in terms of the Soviet Union, they pushed through that, and then you get that desensitized critical mass, which basically accepts that this is the way things are, but then they subversively will meme it to death. They'll make humor about it. I mean, even in the most dire situations, I can remember talking with friends of mine that lived under the communism in the Soviet Union. And later they would talk about how, like, if they wanted to criticize a local member of the party, they would have can beating. They would take a 55-gallon drum, and they would say, beat the can for the love of the party, or something like that. And on its face, you're just hitting a 55-gallon drum with a baseball bat. But it was symbolic that you were actually striking against the party, but you really weren't doing much of anything. But it was just a way to show your dissatisfaction.
I think we need to do like they are in France.
Well, France. I'm glad you're bringing up France.
Yeah, well, before you guys get off onto Francis, and I'm going to be getting out of here in a couple of minutes, I hear some noises downstairs that are making me curious to know whether or not my dogs would like to go out. And there's nobody else here to to police that activity. So I am going to have to do daddy duty before I wind up having to do duty. But
well, at least you're not having to do this duty.
No, that's a duty I don't want to do. No, I don't want to do that. But before I go, want to call you guys' attention to something that you guys may have missed. I gotta clear this friggin' pop-up ad because I goddamn hate pop-up ads. This week, I don't know if you guys know Mark Coleman. Mark Coleman is a former UFC heavyweight champion of the world. Mark Coleman is one of the guys in this country who is the father of mixed martial arts in this country. Mark, he's a legend. Before anybody knew who Randy Couture or Chuck Liddell or any of those other guys were, Vass, you need to get some testosterone and start watching some fights. Mark Coleman is a legend. He's had a very rough life. Well, earlier this week, in his home in Ohio, his home caught fire. He woke up to not being able to breathe and not being able to see and not being able to do one thing, which is more important than anything else. His parents were in the home. Mark Coleman, without being able to see, without being able to breathe, located both of his parents, brought them both out of the house, suffering massive smoke inhalation, burns, and everything else. He's been in a coma for 3 days. He just came out of the coma today. And an act of heroism beyond what most normal people could ever do. Mark Coleman said as of himself today, after finding it, because he had no idea that he even managed to save his parents. He collapsed before he even knew whether or not they were alive. And he saved their lives. And he dragged them out of the house. And as soon as when he came out of his coma, he was in a coma for 3 days. Came out of his coma, he said, "I'm the luckiest man alive."
Yeah.
Mark Coleman he's a friggin' stud. He's a stud. For anybody to have the wherewithal, the power, the strength to be able to overcome something, we've seen it in so many circumstances with Mark when we had our friend Raul Mendez here. Mm-hmm. You know, people that have overcome a tremendous event that took place and they still had the fortitude to come through a winner and emerge a hero and save lives in the process. We always put so much emphasis on everything that's wrong with this world. We very rarely ever have the time to celebrate all the things that are right and good with this world. And me personally, I've been a Mark Coleman fan. I've been a fight fan my whole life. To know that Mark is going to be doing well or doing better. He's still in a tremendous fight right now. He's got his blood oxygen levels are horrible right now, but dude is a stud, and we have to sing his praises a little bit and thank God there's men like him out there, because I'm sure it wouldn't have just been his parents he would have run in to save. He would have saved somebody else too if need be, because that kind of heroism doesn't know a bond. All it knows is humanity.
Yeah.
And so Mark, thank God you're going to be okay. Fight the good fight. We're working on something on a little side project. We spoke to a couple of your friends earlier this week, today, Mark, and we're going to see if we can't help you out a little bit if we can. But in the meantime, I'm going to get going. You guys be safe and shoot straight. I'm going to probably show up in the comment section at some point while I'm standing outside getting rained on and everything else. So
when you do that, let us know how the Paul t-shirt thing did.
How the which?
How the Paul t-shirt thing did for Paul for the gun
Paul Harrell, the fundraiser, I believe the Paul Harrell shirts are still available, but at last tally there was a cutoff date when when they were going to be running the shirts at that price. $675,000.
That's fantastic.
I believe that was the number. I don't know, maybe I'm putting an extra zero on there or not. I'm not sure. I can't remember offhand really. but I know it was a pretty substantial amount of money that was raised just from the sale of the T-shirts. I know that there was also a GoFundMe that was out there for Paul, but I don't know how affiliated with that he was, or somebody set that up, or a family member or something like that. We were just associated with the T-shirt fundraiser, because at least that we could trace everything. So,
right.
But again, with Paul, we're still wishing Paul Harrell the best. Paul Harrell is still out there fighting. But listen, you guys wrap it up tonight. I'm gonna go do what I need to do. We'll catch you back next week. Oh, before I go, you guys want to see my new fishing pole?
Fishing pole.
Fishing pole.
Oh my God, I can only imagine.
All right, hold on.
What is it? An M203? Watch, he's going to pull out an M203. People who aren't in the military have no idea what that is. Gun people know what it is.
Yeah, I know what it is.
Huh?
No, I'm not going to be pulling out a firearm, because the last time
you did it, you got
the last time I retrieved
down.
a firearm from the collection over here, YouTube had a shit fit and said, "Oh my God, he's gonna blow the world up," and they cut our stream off.
It wasn't an AR-15. It can't do that.
Well, here's the thing. On the Range Report, one of the things we've always tried to do is try to bring you the newest, the latest, the greatest, the cutting edge and stuff like that. We're going to be doing a little bit of a metamorphosis on the channel. We're going to be focusing a little bit more on the outdoor life and survival and different tactics. And we want to bring it to something beyond guns. We want to start, I've been amassing a huge collection of different gear, survival foods, different products that we've been slowly but surely testing and everything. And one of the things that I realize is that most gun guys and gun girls are hunters or fishermen or fisherwomen. We like to go fishing. So I decided that I was going to do one better and say I'm going to combine two things that I like: archery and fishing.
No.
So the Ranger
man
is now in possession of a fish finding and spearing compound bow. So,
oh God,
I won't lie. Yeah. I thought he was going to pull out a compression, like a spear gun.
This is the new compound bow, and we're going to be doing some filming with this because we want to get some good video with this soon, and we want to say now the problem that I can't do with, I'm not going to be doing live fishing with this because the arrows that this thing takes are, if I would have hit a fish with it, would be devastating. And I'm a catch and release guy. You know, I use hooks that have no barb. I try to be gentle. I try to, it's just a catch and release thing. If I'm eating a fish I caught, I'm in bad shape. All right, I'm hungry if I'm eating anything I caught. So we try to do catch and release. This I can't do catch and release with this because it would destroy the fish.
Yeah,
because of the way the arrows are designed. But we're going to be doing some practicing with this and show you guys how to do it and everything. We have a friend of ours who is a world-class champion archer, is going to be coming in and showing us how to use that. We're going to be bringing that to you on the channel, along with some other stuff and doodads and everything. And so I just wanted to show off my brand new fishing pole.
That's awesome.
Cool. Very cool.
Sorry,
yeah, I thought it was either going to be a spear gun or it was going to be a hand grenade and a fishing net.
Well, I did have a crossbow to bring on the show.
That's too much like a gun.
Well, it doesn't quite fit my hand as well.
Yeah.
That's it right there. It doesn't quite fit my hand nearly as well.
No,
oh, see that's the compact carry version.
Yeah,
that's the wallet size.
That's the one
going after the minnows.
Just remember that the end of his bolts there have pufferfish venom on it or something.
Yeah, right.
Well,
I would love that.
France is not the only country that's getting upset
All right, so
by
before
a
you
lot
get
of
that,
these
I'm out of here,
liberal
guys. Love you guys.
practices.
Talk to you later.
Talk to you later, Frank.
Have a
Say hi
good
to the
night, Frank.
dogs.
Good night, guys.
I got issues with France because I always have issues with France. 'Cause they
Well,
suck.
France is
The
the
French
only one.
suck.
We surrender.
Okay. This is in Belgium or Belgium.
Belgium's not French. They're not the French. I like the
I
Belgium.
know.
I don't know. Sometimes some of them are assholes.
Well, they kiss up to the French all the time, but I give them the benefit of doubt that they're not French, so they're good.
Okay, so this is what's happening.
Hey, look, it's a fiery but mostly peaceful protest.
Always. Yeah, so this is the farmers. They've been at it all winter. They've been at it.
Same with the Netherlands. I think it's how many countries is it now? Germany, Netherlands,
5,
Belgium,
as I
France?
recall, it's 5.
It's happening all over the EU.
Yeah, there's at least 5 nations that I know of, and it's been going on since August.
Yeah,
Pretty much
I think it
nonstop.
actually started before that, didn't it?
It was a different farmer protest last spring, so 1 year ago. That ended, and then they started this round, which was in August, which is carried all the way through. But it's France. There's always a protest. If you just wait 2 days, there'll be a protest. Don't worry. Because the French.
The funny thing is, though,
this is happening across the EU. And basically they're getting tired of the neoliberal mentality that's been going on over there. It's basically making it so farmers can't make a living anymore.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is that it's like when you piss off the farmers, you're pissing off the people that get you your food. So do you really want to mess around with these people?
Right.
I mean, and the funny thing is, and this is mostly for the people in the audience, because I know that you guys know this, is we can sit around and we can sound like the old guys sitting around coffee talking about how bad the world is. But really, we're winning. Common sense and decency is winning. It's just slow, very slow, but it gains speed.
And we are starting to see some things where we're starting to see people starting to care a little bit more about what's going on in politics.
Yes, but at the same time, we're seeing politicians who are recognizing that, and they're fighting for their power ever so much more. I'll give you a great example of that is what we saw yesterday. And that was, in fact, come on, I hate this.
A lot of the tools that they're using, though, to fight in their desperation causes more people to become aware. So it actually is a bit self-defeating when it comes right down to it. But it's slow. The reaction of the public is slow. Like, we're still going to have to wait and see what the fallout is from the NHS. Did you hear about that? The NHS in England just got rid of what was it? They banned the hormone blockers for children for transition.
Finally.
So a lot of and they're focusing more on the actual mental problem that has come from this, as opposed to throwing chemicals at it. So a lot of these tools are starting to be taken out of the toolbox that have been used for so long to confuse people and to manipulate people. But the reaction is slow.
But here's the thing: all they're doing is going back to the original plan in the first place, which wasn't medicate everyone, but actually deal with the mentality of it, which was the original process that had been going on for decades within the trans community. So they really haven't done anything except stop screwing up the process that was already better. They're just stopping themselves from screwing it up worse. But we are, even as we see a slight bit of movement forward, we see things like what we're seeing now. Yesterday, Senator Bernie Sanders, the socialist, self-proclaimed socialist communist Bernie Sanders, who runs on the Democrat ticket, who gets his money from Democrat donations, but yet he's not a Democrat. He's supposed to be independent, has come up with an idea. He stole the idea from, where was it? The idea came up first here. Nope, I got to do it this way. Hang on. I hate this. This takes 3 years to do it this way.
I ask you again, why do we not work 32 hours instead of 40? Huh.
Yeah, it's great. So he stole the idea originally from our great friends over in the squad, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Jamal Bowman. This was their original idea, which is a 32-hour work week.
Yeah, that's been floated around before.
Yeah, and a lot of people will say, well, Mike, that doesn't sound so bad. That sounds kind of great. I like the idea. It is a hell, and it is horrendous. It will destroy the American economy. People don't realize that, but they're trying to make it sound really nice. And this is because France is doing it. And this is their big example. France has 35-hour work week. It works for them. Yeah, but it doesn't work for anyone else. It doesn't work for Germany. Japan tried it, and it failed.
Several countries have tried it.
Yes, and it's failed everywhere except France, the nation that happens to have a protest every other week. So, you're not really safe. It's not like anyone goes to France because they're productive. The only thing they produce is protests. They're like the best protest sign country in the world. They can make you a protest sign in 5 minutes for anything you want. But anything else other than cheese and wine, I don't really think so. No one thinks so. But he's trying to use that as the excuse, and he's trying to sell this on the idea, oh, you will work less. It'll be fantastic. You're going to do so great. Just vote Democrat, even though he's a socialist, even though progressives are the ones who came up with the idea that he's stolen. Vote Democrat, and you'll only have to work 4 days a week. It'll be fantastic.
And get paid for 5.
And get paid for 5. And to give him credit, and you'll get paid for 5. You make $1,000 a week, you'll work 1 day less, you'll still get $1,000. Here's what he leaves out. If you have to make 10 widgets in a week, now you have to make 10 widgets in 4 days, not 5. Your workload just increased because the amount of work you need to make is still the same. You just have less time to do it in. The cost of everything that you're making just went up because there's less time for everyone. So things are going to become more expensive.
Well, no, let's correct that. Okay. If you normally make 10 widgets in a week,
yes,
a 5-day week.
Yeah.
In order for them to be able to afford to cut down to 32 hours a week and pay you for a 40-hour week, you still have to complete 10 widgets.
Yes.
If you complete less, then they must increase the price of the widgets.
Which is what's going to happen. I'm just skipping the step. It's going to be less. Productivity goes down. If it takes 5 days to make 10 widgets, you only have 4 days. That's not enough time to make 10 widgets. Mm-hmm. So that's going to go down. Cost is going to go up. So that's a problem.
That's the fundamental mistake that they make. Okay, they're doing this. They're pushing for this mandatory, and actually they're changing it from that to quote unquote living wage, which they're equating to $25 an hour.
Yes, which is ridiculous and cannot work. Does not work. We've already gone over that many times.
There are multiple things that have to happen in order for this to actually be able to pay for itself without increasing prices. And number one is people must work harder and produce more. If they fail to do that, then prices have to go up. There is no other choice.
Well, go ahead now.
Sorry. The only other way this would work is if there's a drastic drop off in demand. So if you have to make 10 widgets in 4 days as opposed to 5 days, well, you can do that.
Go up.
The prices will still go up, but demand is less, and the demand it's actually it's depreciating because what would wind up happening is, as things become more expensive, demand would fall because there wouldn't be as many people incentivized to use that product because it's too expensive.
Depends on the product and depends on the service. So there's a problem with that, but you're looking at everything is inflating at the same time, especially when you're thinking about, of course, the living wage. Everything goes, the cost goes up for everything, not
Right.
just that
And
one
the
group.
result is the living wage is never obtained.
Right.
Yeah.
So they push for a higher living wage, which in turn increases costs, which in turn requires even more money for a living wage, and it just keeps repeating.
Yeah, the cycle never ends. And here's another part
that's the circular economy that they want.
Yeah,
right.
Which is, but it's not a circle, it's a spiral, it's a vortex. It's always getting worse each time you get to that next step. Every time you go through that
because
cycle.
more and more people end up getting pushed out of that living wage category
every time.
But I can almost guarantee you though that where I work currently, they would accept something like a 32-hour work week right now.
Here's the thing. I'm not against that. If your business can do it, go ahead. That's the whole point. Businesses aren't restricted. There's no one stopping any business from doing it right now if they want to. But what we are seeing is what's more likely happening, what most businesses have done, is what happened with Google, Amazon, Twitter. We have more people than we have work. Our productivity is screwed because we have these people who are not productive that are sucking money out of the business. And to the extreme, in the case of Twitter, what did they do? They got rid of 80% of their workforce and still are able to make the same product. Gee, that tells you what improved the productivity, not the number of days being worked. It's how they were working in the days they were there. That's one of the things. Frank brought up a great point about this, though. Something that I didn't realize, because when I'm talking about, actually, there was one person who did bring this up in the speech. There we go. Let me make sure I got this. So during the hearing, and there was a congressional hearing about this yesterday, and it was in fact Liberty Vivert from the Washington University Business School who actually pointed out the reality to the panel and to the business, to Bernie Sanders, who quickly tried to distract from her as much as he possibly could. But here's a neat thing. Frank pointed this out. So you're going to go to 32 hours, which means, and get this, folks, Obamacare. If you work 32 hours, that's not considered full-time. You would be removed. The employers, your boss, would no longer have to pay for your health care. Which means you now have to pick up the burden of healthcare. Your cost of living just increased because you are required to have Obamacare, but your boss isn't going to be paying into it. You're going to cover the whole thing yourself. Your cost of living has just gone up while your stress has gone up because your workload has gone up and all the goods you have are going up. Oh, they didn't.
And they also don't have to provide paid vacation.
No, because it's not a 4-hour work week. Now, if they change that part, and they have to, but notice, if you read the bill as it was written, and again, he's copying the bill that comes from last year from the progressives. And if you're looking at that bill, and I'll show you guys right now, here's the text of it. It doesn't say they're changing what's a 40-hour week, a 30-hour week. No. So they would, because they didn't think this through, these progressive geniuses didn't think this through. The consequence is you lose your paid leave, lose your health care.
You lose all your benefits.
But you don't have to work one extra day. Now you just can't afford anything. So you have to get a second job so that you can get those benefits, or rather to pay for those benefits that are no longer benefits.
Because you won't get them through your second job either.
That's right. So they're screwing you 2 ways to Sunday, and they're not even and no one's picking this up. The major news media doesn't want to talk about it. No one's noticed it. As far as I've seen, I'm the only one talking about this, saying this is so stupid, other than on the panel, Ms. Liberty Vivert, who brought this all up and said, and this is what everyone in every nation has figured this out. But they're doing this because they're buying your vote, which goes to the corruption we've seen before. Buying the vote. Oh, we will give you have to work 1 day less if you vote for us. Those evil people, those Republicans, those libertarians, that independent RFK are going to make you work 5 days a week. But if you become more socialist, more progressive, if you just adopt, comply, listen, and obey, you'll only have to work 4 days a week. You'll have to work 2 different jobs.
Yeah,
you'll have to work harder, but hey, go ahead.
Makes it so that it promotes their universal health care paid for by the government. It promotes their UBI, universal basic income, and all this other things that they've been trying to push for as well.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, so I think it's intentional that they left that out. Because if you force all these people to lose these benefits, that's the perfect reason to bring on UBI. Perfect reason for universal health care.
Well,
Perfect
it'd be
reason
hard
for all this other stuff.
It makes it easier to make that argument because the same dumb people that let you cut off 1 day of work and make them lose all their benefits are going to be dumb enough to say, hey, give me a check. Not thinking about, there's a consequence to all this. It's insane. This is insanity. It is insane. And it's so popular. I don't get it. People are cheering this on, saying this is so wonderful. How could we work 5 days a week? It's so archaic. And the whole problem is they kept saying this. It's an 84-year-old law. How this whole idea of working 40 days a week, it's 84 years old. That doesn't mean it's wrong. Math was done,
right.
2 + 2 = 4, which wasn't done with Common Core, got us to the moon. Just because it's old, it doesn't mean it's wrong. The same 2 + 2 = 4 that they learned in the 1950s and the 1970s to get to the moon were the same 2 + 2 = 4 that the Greeks were doing back in the ancient times, that when they figured out that Earth was orbiting the sun and they could actually do the distance. And this is a guy staring at the stars, and they used that same math that got us to the moon. They figured it out. So it's ancient. It's not just old, it's ancient, and it's not wrong. Saying it's 84 years old, what is that supposed to mean?
Yeah.
It's just an excuse. It's a way for them to stop talking about, it's old. Well, obviously, everything that's old is wrong. Okay. This is why they don't respect their elders. This is why they're trying to destroy everything that's older than themselves, including the Constitution. It's evil. I'll stop for a minute. I'm on a rant. I know.
Yeah, they really don't think a lot of this stuff through. Okay, and it's a pandering for votes is what it amounts to.
Dal, say it, Dal.
What's that?
You typed it. Say it.
Oh, does anybody else see the irony of an old rich white guy appropriating the premise of a bill put forward first by women of color?
Yeah.
I mean, this is I will be able to sell this better than you.
Well, and here's the other thing that people don't understand. Bernie Sanders never held a job in his life.
Yep, that's true.
Okay,
Yeah.
Prior to him being elected for office, he had never held a job.
True. He's always been in politics. He doesn't know how to do anything else because it takes no effort or work to be a politician. a bad politician.
He couldn't even be a lifeguard.
No. No, he held absolutely no jobs.
Yeah. You know, one unintended consequence of having this bill, that if they were to actually try to impose this on the economy, would be that if people see that they're not going to be able to make money at their job, then and they're not producing anything, they're still going to need to make ends meet. So what ends up happening is inevitably there will be those that, unless they're punished for it or disincentivized for it, you're going to see an acceleration of a parallel economy where people are going to try to create their own small businesses. Because what would end up happening is, you cut out that extra 8 hours of work. Well, that extra 8 hours now has to be invested in something else. So unless they're going to provide some form of incentive to distract you from trying to make ends meet, your natural inclination for a lot of people in the United States would be to make money by another means. And so you could see a boost in the small business and parallel economy, unless at the same time that the government's passing such legislation as to cut the hourly wages and whatever, then, I mean, that's what I would see, is that there would be just a rise, a boom in the parallel economy. And that would be an unintended consequence. That would be something that I don't think they would appreciate, because that means that people are now no longer able to be distracted because they're using that extra time that they would have been using to work at a controlled business. Now they're uncontrolled and they're doing an unrestricted market participation.
So straight chillaxing. The thing is, it didn't start with the boomers. The erosion of our Constitution started well before that.
It was almost immediate.
Actually, it was.
In part, it was immediate, but it comes from the colleges. It comes from the 20-year-olds being indoctrinated at the colleges that then go into the economy, into various businesses, into the politics, and they continue to push that. We are specifically talking about the left, in particular, the fringe of the left, which would be the progressive movement, the socialist movement. They're the ones who have been trying to throw out the Constitution. You don't see that from the right. You don't see that even from the center, more centrist groups like the libertarians. You're not seeing it there. It's coming from the far left. And the far left got it from the colleges over several decades, and they've been infiltrating into the media, into politics, into entertainment, bringing their political ideology, their propaganda with them. So, yeah.
And a lot of it comes about by, I was actually just listening to a deal today that's put out. Who was it put out by? I'll have to look it up. I can't remember, but it's actually a city that is doing a course on the Constitution. And it says that the Constitution was intentionally written to be vague, requiring it to be interpreted. No, it was not written to be vague. Okay, it is actually written to mean exactly what it says. And there is no interpretation that needs to be done with it.
Yeah.
The fact that we believe that we have been led to believe that the Constitution needs to be interpreted is the very reason why our Constitution is being eroded to this day.
And a lot of that interpretation occurs after the 1920s.
Yes.
Like when you're looking at
a Republican, straight chillaxing, it's not, the erosion of the Constitution isn't partisan. Okay,
No, it's not
being
a party
eroded by
affiliated thing.
both parties.
Yeah. The more recent elements of it have been probably promoted the most and most effectively when I say the progressives.
It
That
depends
has
on
nothing-
which areas you're looking at.
Well,
Okay,
yeah.
if you're looking at intelligence and that type of spying on us and so forth, that was primarily done through Republicans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's correct when he mentions, there's the Patriot Act. That's from the right. Yes.
Okay, they both,
That was
depending on
horrible.
what they want, they both wrote it probably about the same. Okay, it just depends on how you look at it, which areas you're looking at.
I mean, even as soon as the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers, if you go back and forth between the two pieces of dialogue within the discussions before the ratification of the Constitution, even they were discussing pieces of it that they wanted to either leave out or include, and they kept coming to loggerheads on it because they couldn't come down to an agreement as to where individual liberties should reside and how well they should be protected from the influence of federal government.
Well, and here's what's really interesting. If you look at the Anti-Federalist papers, a lot of the things that they predicted in the Anti-Federalist papers
Have come to pass.
are actually true, coming true, or have came true.
Yeah.
No, corruption is the corruption that we are living through now isn't new or unique. It's not something that's special to America. It's happened to every country to some degree or another at some point. And it's been historically, we repeated a lot of the same steps because the corruption leads to many of the same problems in every government that has ever been created by mankind. Some things are better at slowing that process down. Some take it down a different avenue, but they always wind in the same places. So this is not new.
No, and the beauty of the American experiment was that it was one of the few frameworks of government that could last the longest and resist the most corruption if it was followed correctly.
Yeah,
but
ideally it could, yes.
Yes, ideally, if everything worked the way it should, and we retained the original framework of the Constitution, and did not try to interpret it so that we could create these bubbles of existence that allowed corruption to fester, it would have worked better. That's why we at the Liberty First Foundation try so hard to not only educate, but also to remind people that the framework is there because it's the foundation of what can work the best. It's not perfect, but it works the best at providing security for your unalienable rights, your self-determination as a person, your ability to control your own future. But if you just keep putting your trust in the government that you elect, without holding it to its feet to the fire and making it accountable, it's just going to be one of those things where we're going to go the same way that the Senate in Rome did. We're eventually going to have a Caesar.
Okay. A lot of you probably know who Chris Ann Hall is. Okay, if you don't, I do recommend that you find out who she is. She is very well versed in early American history and the Constitution. She is a lawyer and so forth. Chris Ann Hall, as most of you know, I don't agree with term limits. I agree. I think that we already have term limits. Chris Ann Hall and I are on the same page. We have term limits. They are called elections. Why do we beg to even be less involved in government? Our lack of involvement is what makes these people lifetime appointments. Term limits will only mean they will work harder to get richer quicker at our expense and give even more power to the deep state.
And I agree with that. I agree with that.
Honestly, if we want to get rid of corruption, we must get involved in politics. That is the only way to get corruption out of government.
Or minimize it at that. Let's be realistic. Minimize it. We're human beings. Let's be honest. It's not perfect, but we can control this. We can reduce this. We can reverse this. Everything that's happening in America right now, all the problems with the losses of our freedoms, our rights, our privilege, everything we're losing, we can retain. We can keep them. We don't have to keep moving left eternally. We don't. We don't have to become fascist. It's not necessary. I respect that straight chillaxing. Excuse me.
Chillaxing. No, I think it's great that he's putting this in. I think.
No.
I'm just going to have him look something up, though.
Okay.
Okay. I recommend a book by James McGregor Burns. You can find it on Audible, or you can get it through various other retailers, but it is on Audible. Get a book called The American Experiment. Okay. You're going to find that a lot of what we're seeing today going on, this isn't the first time we've gone through this type of stuff. In fact, we've gone through this type of stuff very many times throughout our history. And that's, again, is a lot of stuff that has continued to help with the erosion of our constitutional foundation.
Yeah. And it's, I want you to understand, straight chillaxing, we are never trying to attack you, which is why unless we're mentioning the name of someone and what they've done, normally a bill, it's almost always a politician. When I'm talking about Bernie, I'm talking about Bernie's bill. I'm talking to him. When I bring up Ilhan Omar or AOC, I'm talking about Emmanuel Macron. Okay, those are people. You won't hear us say Joe down the block, Bob, that's, next door neighbor, because they're our neighbors, the people around us. They really aren't the problem. It's the politicians. It's the political ideology replacing that commitment, that obligation to serve the public. So I always want to make sure that that's clear, that we're not picking on them. And when
I'm definitely not picking on him, because I used to believe a lot of the same things that he's bringing up.
No, I think it's fantastic. It's a start, which is part of what I said in my responses. That's where you first became aware. He mentions, 9/11. That's where he suddenly had the lightning rod hit, and he's like, or lightning hit the rod, and he's like, oh my God, something's going wrong. Everyone has that moment. It could be something different. For someone else, it may be Benghazi, or maybe it's Vietnam or Korea, World War II. There's a lot of different moments for people, depending on their age, generation, how they grew up, what life experiences they've had. The thing is, don't stop there. I always like to say, and this is why I do the show, and you guys know this. This is why I go backwards in time always, because we got here somehow. How did we get to that moment? Something led there.
That's why you've heard me bring up Roosevelt a lot. You've heard me bring up a lot of the stuff where we were at a tipping point right around 1900 was a critical tipping point. Just prior to the Civil War was another tipping point. Just after the Civil War was another tipping point.
Mr. Wilson.
Woodrow Wilson. Okay. He actually took what Teddy Roosevelt started, advanced it, and then Frank FDR expanded on it even more.
But no matter how far left we can go, there's always going to be at some point a counterpoint that pulls everything back. And we can look at Argentina as a good example of that with Javier Milei.
Well, there's two ways that we pull back. Javier Milei down in Argentina, yes, that is one, and that's a preferable way. The more common way is there's a war.
Yeah.
Whether it's a
There's
civil
a revolution
war,
or a civil war.
yeah, whether it's a revolutionary, a civil war, or even a regional war, which could be whether that's World War II or it's just a regional conflict like India versus China over their border, or looking at Argentina and I think it's Venezuela. They're fighting over their border. We see things like that all the time. So it's always going to erupt and see either some kind of conflict or you have the election. I always prefer the election. Usually we're going to see the conflict. That's usually the way these things get resolved. But that's why we have to have the conversation. If we're not having the conversation, I guarantee you it's going to be the conflict. If we're having a conversation, we get the option to take the easier route, which is the election. But as an example, to everyone, straight chillaxing, everyone, I know we're running out of time here today, but let me bring up this example of what I'm talking about on some of these things here. And that's, we just had, there it is. So right now, we have just seen the fourth time in 4 years that the Biden-Harris administration has abandoned Americans in a foreign country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
2021, 5,000, Afghanistan. 2022, 10,000, Ukraine. 2023, 15,000 in the Sudan. It is believed, according to the New York Times in 2010, there were at least 45,000 Americans living in Haiti. No one, no news media has yet to say how many Americans are in Haiti at this moment. The United States State Department at this moment will not give an estimate of how many Americans are in Haiti. And I think the reason why is because we're looking at Joe Biden in this one event this year doubled the number. We went from 30,000 that were abandoned around the world to 60,000 or more abandoned under the Biden-Harris administration because he doesn't care. Right now, we've got one Congressman Corey Mills out of Florida, saved 10 Americans in Haiti. Not the Biden administration, not the United States military. They evacuated, and this is why this is evil, because we evacuated our embassy. So every single American who is trying to find a safe zone in Haiti can't go to the embassy. It's not there. It's an empty building. There's no one there to protect them. The sanctuary is gone. When you evacuate it, that's why the evacuation of our embassies normally is the last thing you do, not the first one, because the American citizens need somewhere to go. And if the embassy is there, the personnel are there, they can go there and it's American soil and we can protect them. They have a safe space. That's why everyone who travels overseas, first thing you do is find out where the American embassy is. Figure out how to get from wherever you are to that embassy so that you have a way out. We just took that away from everyone in Haiti.
What's going on in Haiti is not something new. It's been going on for years.
Well, that's my point. But we've seen it. The same thing has been repeated. We did that in Benghazi. We did the same thing in Afghanistan. We did it in Ukraine. We did it in the Sudan. The numbers are just getting bigger and bigger, and the media is
done it with Israel, Palestine.
Yeah, the same thing with Hamas. The same thing with Gaza, with Americans again being killed, Americans being tortured as we speak. It's just getting bigger and worse. And this is the corruption. Now, yes, did Biden do it? Absolutely. Is he the root of the problem? No. I will hold him accountable for the problem as it exists. He's abandoning Americans left, right, and everywhere, but he's not the root of the problem. The root of the problem goes back, well, we got to go into the college indoctrination. We have to go into the progressive ideology, socialist movement. We go into the ever leftward trend of our news media. there's a lot more to it. But to hold him accountable, I can definitely say, right this second, is he accountable right now? Is he the person who is making this happen now? Yes, he is. Because with a word, he could have taken the Marines that went to evacuate the Haiti embassy, could have stayed there and protected every single American. He could have flown a C-130 over into Haiti, told the warlords, if you shoot even one American soldier, the entire United States military is going to come and invade Haiti. You guys are all going to die. They would never shoot at a single American. They would never shoot a single American military personnel because they know that the entire army would come in. They'd all die. We could have evacuated all the Americans. Could have done the same thing in the Ukraine. We could have gone out of Ramstein base, Air Force Base, could have took one C-130, could have picked up all the kids, all the moms. No one would have shot us down. Matter of fact, if he did it in February of 2022, there was no war. Could have picked them all up, could have took them all away. Didn't. Took away the embassy instead. Think about that. Think about what the consequences are because the media isn't holding him accountable. And then I guarantee you, most Americans right now don't even know that 10 Americans were evacuated because a congressman took personal action, not the government. Biden may try and take credit for that. He can't. Because if he takes credit for those 10, he has to then have to admit, oh, yeah, by the way, there's another 40,000 that are still there. He's not going to talk about this. News media is not going to talk about this. I'm talking about it because we have to understand to hold them accountable. And then once we hold them accountable, then go back down the line and go, okay, and since we're going to cut this corruption here, let's keep going. Where's the corruption? Let's get all of it. Let's mine out all that corruption and fix it.
As we should. I mean, this is even before the blatant examples that Biden has given over the last 4 years. I know that you and I, Boss, have talked about this before with my experience of 9/11 while I was overseas.
Yeah.
Where even under Bush, there was no help for getting Americans out of hotspots. Mm-hmm. In fact, I can't remember the last time there was an example where Americans actually sent in forces to extract Americans. There was the
been a long time
during 9/11. There was I was overseas and I was in Johannesburg, South Africa, and when the word came out that America was going to start bombing Afghanistan, there was an Afghani neighborhood that was 5 blocks away from my house, and they put it in the paper publicly announcing that they were going to hunt down any Americans that they knew were abroad that were living in the country, and they were going to kill them. So our only course of action was to go to the embassy, but we couldn't because the embassy had sent out like a week prior a notice that said any Americans abroad, if you are abroad and you're not directly attached to the embassy, we cannot help you. You must find your own way home. So yeah, this is not a new foreign policy, but this is definitely something that shirks the duty of government. The primary duty of government is to ensure the well-being of its people and the security of their independent rights. If you can't do that, then you shouldn't be the government. And that was 2000.
Yeah, and that's one of my problems. And I had a problem with 9/11 and everything that, all the consequences of that. I've talked about that many times. I think the last time that we really publicly and very vocally went in to save Americans was Grenada, which would be under Ronald Reagan, which really was a fluff of a war. Quite honestly, it was more about, wag the dog than anything else. But that was the last time we actually sent troops and said, no, we're saving Americans. Yeah. We had the failed attempt with Iran, and we had Grenada. That's it. And I don't think we've done it since then, which is sad.
And I want to point out too is that even with that, even with knowing that the American government was not going to back individuals that were living abroad, that were not tied to some capacity to the government, when something like the Patriot Act came up, even I, who at the time was just in the flower of my youth and young and stupid, I realized that was a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was nothing patriotic about that act. So that was my lightning rod moment. That was the moment that I realized that the government's not there to work for you ever. Like my dad ended up getting left over there. He had obligations to stay, but it wasn't an American that got him home. He found his own way home using contacts between Africa, Greece, and the United States. That was not government related at all.
We've been seeing this trend pretty much since Grenada, because we did send troops to get American people out of Grenada.
Yeah. That was the
okay, right? But I think that was the most recent one.
That, as far as I can recall,
that I can think of.
Yeah, I do not recall another situation where we've actually gone in to get the people out.
Yeah.
Not that we haven't had the opportunity.
Oh, no, we've had
plenty of opportunities, but they just haven't done it.
Well, it's like I said, if we had a leader strong enough, and we've occasionally had presidents who were strong enough to come up and literally just ballsy, just say, we're sending in a C-130, we're picking up our people. If you shoot one American soldier, the entire American military is coming in.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you they won't get shot. I guarantee you, I don't care which warlord it is, how crazy they think they are, and whether they want to eat people or not. I don't care. Not one of them. They will make sure that not one of their men is even looking at the Americans in a sideways for fear of having the hell that is known as the American government moving all at once.
Haiti, all you'd have to do is send 2 AC-130s down there and it'd be toast.
You know, but the world knows. They love and fear. We are the cowboys. We don't believe in overkill. There is no such thing as not having a bigger gun. There's always a bigger gun. Yeah. There's always a bigger bomb. And they know that we will use them. We're that crazy people, which they love and they hate. There is no government. If we said we're picking up our civilians, don't you do anything or else, they're not going to do it. No. You just have to have the balls to say it in the first place.
Honestly, if we took C-5 down to Haiti, okay, and said we were evacuating all Americans, you harm a hair off a single American's head, you will bring down the wrath of the American military, full American military might. There wouldn't be a soul touching them.
No. They would clear the path for them, to protect them, to make sure it's like every pebble's out of the way. They will roll out the red carpet to say, please go this way. This is the safest way we could possibly make for you to get out. Because they know within 24 hours, you've got the entire Marine Corps landing. You've got the Navy off your port. You got the Air Force dropping bombs all day long. It's not like we don't have enough of them or can't make more.
And like I said,
nations are crazy.
For an island the size of Haiti, 2 AC-130s would devastate it.
Yeah.
Just absolutely devastate
it. And that's why it's so upsetting to me that we have a leader. We have leaders, left and right here. What I'm talking about is they're not saying it. They're not demanding that this be said. Same thing for Gaza. I have to say, my opinion about Gaza is the same as my opinion about Haiti. You have Americans. Screw you. We will flatten the place, and we can. And it wouldn't take very long. This is not an excursion where we're going to be like, oh, this is going to be a tough fight. You're Gaza. You're Haiti. We will wipe you out in a day. and have time to go and, I don't know, play golf.
And have a nice lunch.
Nice lunch, golf, and you're dead. You're already gone. We can flatten this place. Don't push us. Give us our people. Not asking for a lot. Give us our people, then do whatever the hell you're doing. You want to kill each other? Go ahead, knock yourselves out. I don't care. It's your country. Do your thing. When you're done, give us a call. We'll see if we talk to you or not at that point. But if you have our people, you're giving me a reason to send more of my people to wipe you out.
Yeah.
And that's the point of government, by the way. That is the point of government, to make that threat so that other governments respect you and say, we won't pick on those people anymore.
Well, that's what's meant by common defense.
Yeah.
Okay. That is what common defense is.
Big stick diplomacy.
Yeah.
Okay. And it shouldn't matter if it's one American or if it's hundreds of Americans. It should be the same. If American lives are threatened, American civilian lives are in danger in a country, we should be pulling out all the stops.
Right.
Period.
Absolutely.
To remove them from that danger, not necessarily to neutralize the danger to the entirety of the country.
No. If Haiti wants to shoot each other,
get them out of harm's way.
If they want to shoot and cannibalize,
that's it. That's the extent of it.
Yeah, let them cannibalize each other all day long. I don't care. That's their country, their land. I don't care what they do. Give me the American.
Okay, but the second that they harm that American, then all bets are off.
Exactly, and that's my problem with Gaza. We know for a fact they have killed Americans. We know for a fact that they've killed the hostages that are Americans. I'm sorry. Somebody, you want to complain to me about, Israel's being harsh. You killed our Americans that you held hostage, that you took hostage in the first place and tortured. You killed American civilians. I have no sympathy. You're lucky I'm not the guy in charge.
Honestly don't think Israel's going far enough.
I'd have flattened something by now. If I were American president, maybe that's why I never got elected in office. I'd be screaming up and I'd be on the floor of Congress right now going, why are buildings standing? We need to flatten something.
Well, I think that speaks to a bigger problem though, which is that instead of the big stick diplomacy where we care about our own citizens, our government has taken on the role of
the world's police force, which we shouldn't be.
World's police force, but more of that regime. The word I was looking for is regime change. They want more out of it than just people. They want resources. They want structure that they can leverage, and that is more valuable to them than one American citizen. And Biden's proved that. Yes, because every time that the American civilians have been involved, he's abandoned them. But anytime that he thinks he can get good optics to have some sort of political leverage, he's all for it.
So you're talking about Brittany Griner and how he moved heaven and earth to get her. Mind you, left the other American prisoners in Russia, like the American Marine who's innocent, versus Brittany Griner, who admits she was guilty. He moved heaven and earth to get her out, left the American. Hasn't even tried to get the Americans in Afghanistan. Won't even talk about them. They don't exist. Ukraine, they don't exist. Sudan, don't exist. Hamas is the only ones that he's actually talked about occasionally.
And that's only because he's received pressure from both sides, both the Jewish base here in the United States that normally votes Democrat, and also the pro-Hamas that support the leftist side of his party. The radical left. So that translates into votes and optics for him, which again proves the point. our government's not concerned with average citizens. They're concerned about power. It goes back to the power argument. And it's disgusting.
It is. You know what I think? You want to hear something? Russia did one thing that was really, really impressive. And a lot of people who are watching the show who's younger, you may not have ever heard about this. But between the 70s to about the mid 80s, there was a rash of terrorists taking over airplanes. They would, not like the Twin Towers, but they would hijack the airplane, fly to some other country and try and escape, or they try and get their fellow freedom fighters, as they would always call them, released from prison because they had a plane load of prisoners from this country or that country. And there was a rash of this around the globe.
That was like late 80s, right?
Yeah, between the 70s and mid late 80s.
Mid 70s to early mid 80s.
Yeah.
I kind of remember that. I was still pretty young.
No problem. And it only happened to Russia once.
Yeah.
They're the only nation in the world that it happened exactly once.
Yeah, some terrorist group took over a school, and the Russians came in and just annihilated them.
Well, it was actually a plane. Terrorists got in, they took over the plane. They said, "You're going to release our comrades, or else, the people on the plane are going to die." They brought in the KGB. They came in with their special forces, wiped out everyone on the plane. Now, they weren't necessarily trying to kill all of the civilians, but they weren't really caring if they hit them either. They killed almost as many civilians as they did the hostages, the hostiles. And they killed every single one of the hostiles. Everybody who's trying to hijack the plane, killed each and every one of them, killed a bunch of the hostages too. Mm-hmm. And turned around and said, Russia doesn't negotiate. No, thank you. And if you try it, we'll do it again. Doesn't matter.
And they did do it again. Because I remember, like I said, I brought up the school. There was a school that a bunch of terrorists decided to take over. Russians didn't give a shit. They went in there, guns blaring.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wiped out everyone. Every terrorist is in there. Okay, got a lot of civilians that were there too, but they didn't care.
Yeah.
Okay.
No one and everyone stopped targeting Russia and Russians. It's not worth it.
Nobody's messed with them since.
Yeah.
It's like you're not going to get anything for this. That was the one thing they did really well. No one was targeting Russians anywhere in the world.
Well, actually, New York State, they are filling up public schools with illegals, but those illegals are about to get an eviction.
I hope so.
Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, there's a thing just came out.
Talk to us while you're typing, Mike.
I can't believe that Hochul would go that far.
Yeah,
honestly.
They are.
She doesn't want to get rid of her slave dress. Yeah, right, Jen. America wasn't supposed to negotiate with terrorists either. We were supposed to be able to deploy surgical strikes that would actually wipe out the hostiles and neutralize the threat. We just try to value our people a little more. That was the image anyway, was that we value the life of an American higher than we do Russia's, I guess.
You know what? I value American lives extremely high. And I still believe in flattening stuff when someone takes our people. Make a statement. Hey, we've got Moabs. By the way, if you don't know what a Moab is, mother of all bombs. It's basically a large fuel air bomb. Gee, let me explain that. It's basically the largest non-nuclear bomb you can drop. It's almost the equivalent. Yeah, Moab. Almost the equivalent of a nuke, except there's no radiation. Drop a few of those on the enemy. I guarantee you they will think twice.
Oh, there it is.
Good. About time. We are about 4 years too late on that, but okay.
They're basically saying that they have 30 days. Once they exceed that 30 days, they can be evicted.
So where are they going to send them?
Don't know. Illinois is doing a similar thing too.
See, this is the problem, though. Is like you have these sanctuary cities and these sanctuary states that are like, oh, well, send us these people, but they don't really mean it because they're a bunch of NIMBYists.
Right.
Not in my backyard. Well, they show up in your backyard,
exactly,
and then they're like, okay, well, now you can't stay here.
Send them back. Send them back to wherever they came from.
Well, that's
wherever they entered the nation from.
Put them on a plane, get them out of here.
That's it. Put them on a plane, put them on a boat, and not my problem. You're gone.
Okay. And thing is if we actually followed the rule of law that we are supposed to, in rule of international law,
right,
as far as refugees and asylum seekers go, most of these people wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Sure.
But we have disregarded that.
Mm-hmm. Now, see, they're going to give that eviction notice, but then they're most likely going to wind up in another part of the country.
Well, what they're actually finding out, and this is starting to come to light too, is once they are evicted from one shelter, they go and apply and get into a second shelter.
Of course.
And they're just rotating through the shelters.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't know who they really are, there's no ID, no verification. And you're using the sanctuary as a shield, which they can abuse. Mm-hmm. No one's going to check. Because if you checked on them, then they wouldn't be getting sanctuary. Someone might deport them. So they're using that as their shield. Just take them, throw them out the country. I'm a very compassionate man, believe it or not. I know it doesn't sound like it with some of the things I say sometimes. Follow the law. I'm more than happy to help people. I want to help people, lift them up. I understand what it is to have a difficult life, have difficult times in your life. I get it. But, I ask for very little for that hand up. And breaking the law and biting the hand that's feeding you, no, I'm sorry. No, then you're not going to get the help.
User's right. Antarctica's open. They can form a nation in Antarctica. How's that sound?
I'll even give them twigs and a lighter. No problem.
Yeah. And actually, no, it's not claimed by any country.
Yeah.
True. Mm-hmm.
So.
And the more this happens, the less compassionate people will sound. Like it's not that we don't feel for people that have hard times, like Mike was saying. It's just it's so much, so fast. There's no way to absorb it, and so you put everybody else at a disadvantage.
Why international law was designed, where you were supposed to seek refuge at the first country that you came across where you could seek refuge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That was to keep all nations from becoming overburdened.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the whole purpose. Okay. They realized that there was a need for offering asylum at times and for people to be able to request asylum. But you were supposed to do that in the nearest country of safe haven. And that's not being followed.
Yeah.
Okay. We're getting people that should have sought safe haven in multiple countries before they even got close to the U.S. And they haven't.
No, because the incentive to come to the United States is that the richest nation in the world is going to take care of you.
Yeah, and except we're not the richest nation in the world. We may have one of the largest economies in the world, but we're definitely not the richest. We're actually one of the poorest if you look at our debt sheets.
Well,
right,
but counting that way, but they're not counting that way.
No, but the optics of it is that America has historically been, since World War II, when we were rebuilding nations after the devastation, that we're a rich and powerful country.
Yeah.
But that has a limit. But we're portrayed as not having any limits.
Well, relative to them, relative to their world, we're not there. What's the limit? Our poor people making $12,000 a year are middle class in every other part of the world, almost entirely, other than a handful of first world nations, even most of the second world nations. You make $12,000 American, you're living decent. You're not in poverty. It's only in America where you're in poverty for $12,000. So relative to the rest of the world, how is America not? Even the poor people are rich. The country's just loaded. When every creature comfort, that we take as granted is like absolutely normal, running water, electricity. Yeah. You go anywhere in America and everyone considers that to be that's not even the standard. That's below standard. It's absolute essential. It's always there. Yeah, go to almost every country in the world. That's not normal. That is not the norm. So, I understand why they want to come here. I understand why they think we have unlimited, infinite resources and infinite wealth. I understand why they think that, but that still doesn't justify to come here and try and take it from us.
No, but they're not really taking it from us. They're being offered it by the government.
Parts of the government. Political opportunists. Yes. We need to stop that. It's destroying us all. But that being, I think you're getting ready, but I know I'm getting ready. I gotta jump.
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. I mean, we could talk about this for another 10 hours and still barely scratch the surface.
True.
Okay. Folks, one of the best things that you can do to help us out is to help us spread the word. Okay? Please like and share this. Subscribe so that you know when we're going live. You can subscribe via Facebook or YouTube, either one. Get the alerts. Turn on the alerts so that you know when we're going live. Something else that helps promote us in the streams is the more engagement we get on these, even after we do the live stream, the more relevant it comes in other people's feeds. Yes, hit that bell icon.
Ring that bell for freedom.
You can also visit us at L1F.us. That's our website. Here you will find articles that we've written. We've been a little lax on getting new articles up there, and that's going to start changing here real soon. Also visit us on our YouTube channels at the Liberty First Foundation and the Range Report. Frank's been adding a lot of new videos to the Range Report. Another thing that we've got going on is we've got our membership drive promotion going on. And once we hit the mark of 250 new members, we will be giving away a Henry Golden Boy rifle with custom engraving of the Liberty First Foundation logo. Okay, you can find the official rules on our website at L1F.us, register/membership drive promotion. Okay, and right on our front page, click the Join Now button, and it'll take you to this page, and you can find out everything that you need to know there.
And folks, it's $15 a year. That's less than most subscription services are every month. And because the Liberty First Foundation is a smaller group, your joining us actually gives you a main voice to everybody here.
It does.
We all know each other.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us actually live near each other. So we're not only talking to each other here, as a group. We're also talking to each other as individuals while we're walking around town or we're traveling between places. So
right.
Right now we're small. So getting in to the group now gives you almost not a founding stake in the Liberty First Foundation, but it definitely gives you more direct access, right, and more influence. So that's something to consider when you're throwing your money where your mouth is. Yeah, when you're taking what little that we do have at this moment of Bidenomic strife and actually looking to invest in a future. This is a good group to get in on because it's ground level. You're on the ground level when you're joining us now. So that's important.
And we do have plans, but we have plans of a lot of things that we want to do. Okay. Our mission is to educate. And that's what we do here with this live stream every week. But we want to start spreading that besides just doing the live stream. We want to start taking this education out to the people, out to the masses. I believe that our country was founded on a foundation of the people. Okay. We were never founded upon a foundation of government. It was the people that made government that made our country strong. It wasn't government that made the people strong.
I like the joke that we were born in a bar.
We've lost sight of that in our history, and we need to start turning this around and start putting the power back into the hands of the people. And we've got multiple initiatives where we're trying to do this, but all that requires funding. And the more people that we get joining as members of the Liberty First Foundation, the larger our voice can become in a lot of various initiatives that we are working on.
And that includes lots of different things: public outreach, classes, events,
classes, outreach, constitutional education,
legislation,
articles, lawsuits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All this costs money. And as we get more involved, it costs lots of money. We've got multiple lawsuits that we want to file, but until we've got the money to support the filing of those lawsuits, we can't do anything with them. Okay, that's just kind of where we're at, folks. And if we want to really turn this country around, it takes you, me, Michael, Dow, User, Jan, all these other people to be involved.
Okay. Jan asked about a payment processor. Is PayPal still the only way to become a member?
Yes, right now. That is the only way. I'm trying to get another one online for us, but right now PayPal is the only way. I am working on that. I just haven't been able to get it finalized yet. Okay. With that, we are here every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Folks, invite your friends. We are slowly growing the number of people that are in our live stream, and they're in comments, and that's great. Let's try to grow this even more, because the more voices that get heard, the more voices that we can, or more people that we can reach, the more that our message can be spread. Yeah. With that, we will see you next week, Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you, everybody.
Salute.